They disrespected Ibrahim Traoré, unaware he is the president. It was a grey and moody dawn in Paris. The early morning fog clung to the windows of Charles de Gaulle Airport, softening the shapes of airplanes beyond the glass. Inside the terminal, people moved like machinery, some half asleep, others sharply dressed and stressed, clutching laptops and lattes. In the middle of it all, standing alone near Gate E24, was a man in an understated brown suit. He looked out of place, but not for the reasons one might think. He wasn't nervous, he wasn't lost, he simply observed. His posture was upright, his shoulders broad, his expression calm, but most importantly, he carried himself with a quiet authority, the kind that isn't learned in school or gained through wealth. He wasn't here to be seen. He was here to travel. In his hand, a boarding pass. Flight 728 to Ouagadougou, seat 1A. The man was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. But nobody knew it. Not the passengers, not the staff, not even the diplomat seated 3 rows behind him in coach. And that's exactly how he wanted it. When the call for first-class passengers came, Ibrahim stepped forward. He nodded politely at the gate attendant, who barely glanced up before scanning his ticket. No red carpet, no security, no entourage, just one man with a purpose. He entered the aircraft and turned left, toward the luxury of first class. The cabin was warm and glowing, with its polished wood accents, plush leather seats, and the soft scent of eucalyptus and champagne. He reached seat 1A and gently stowed his satchel in the overhead bin. He didn't lean back with a sense of superiority. He didn't call for wine or demand anything at all. He just sat, silent, peaceful, as though he belonged not just to the seat, but to the stillness around it. Then it happened. "Excuse me, sir." The voice was sharp, firm, slightly irritated. He turned. A young flight attendant, no older than 30, stood by his seat with a clipboard in hand. Her brows were drawn together, her lips pursed. "Economy class is that way, sir. This cabin is for first-class passengers." Ibrahim blinked, not out of confusion, but surprise. He said nothing at first, just met her gaze. "My seat is 1A, he replied calmly, holding up the boarding pass. She barely looked at it. "I think you've misunderstood. This section is reserved for passengers with premium status. Please return to your assigned seat before we call security." From across the aisle, someone chuckled. A man in a suit muttered to his neighbor, "Trying to sneak into first class. Classic." The energy shifted. The passengers weren't just watching now, they were judging. The flight attendant's tone became more aggressive. "Sir, you need to move now." Ibrahim looked down, then slowly reached into his satchel. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He simply pulled out a small, worn wallet and opened it. From inside, he removed a plain but official-looking ID card. There was nothing flashy about it, no gold, no diamonds. Just the words, Président du Faso, Ibrahim Traoré. The moment the attendant read the name, her face changed. She blinked, then looked again, and again. The color drained from her face. The second flight attendant walked over. She took one glance at the card and froze. Just then, a voice rang out from the back of the plane. "What is going on here?" A Burkinabe diplomat rushed forward. His voice thundered through the cabin. "Do you not know who this is? This is the president of Burkina Faso. His Excellency—" You could hear a pin drop. The whispers stopped. The smirks faded. Every passenger stared at the man in seat 1A and realized they had misjudged greatness. The flight crew stood frozen, mouths half open, regret rising in their chests. One of them whispered, I didn't know." Ibrahim stood, slowly. Not with anger, not with arrogance, just presence. "You didn't know because you didn't care to ask." He looked around, eyes sweeping the room like a slow wind. "You saw a quiet man. You assumed I was less. You spoke down to me. Not because I was wrong, but because I didn't fit your idea of who deserves respect." The younger attendant's lip trembled. She bowed her head. "I'm so sorry, Mr. President. I never meant—" He raised a hand gently, not to silence her, but to offer peace. "This isn't about me," he said. "This is about everyone who looks like me, dresses like me, travels without a name badge." He looked her in the eyes softly. "Dignity isn't worn. It's given." The rest of the flight passed in silence. The businessmen who had laughed now looked out the window in shame. The diplomat behind him remained respectfully quiet. The flight attendants hovered, ready to offer water or warmth, but Ibrahim asked for nothing. He simply sat and read a book on his tablet. Hours later, the plane began its descent into Ouagadougou. On the ground, a motorcade waited. Security, ministers, journalists, cameras, all ready to greet the president. When the cabin door opened, the same young attendant stood there, stiff and flushed with embarrassment. Ibrahim turned to her, gave her a small smile, a human one. "Learn from this and teach others." Then he stepped off the plane, not just as a head of state, but as a symbol of humility, wisdom, and grace. Because that day, the world saw something more powerful than politics. They saw a man who carried his crown not on his head, but in his character. As Ibrahim descended the aircraft stairs, the heat of Ouagadougou wrapped around him like a familiar blanket. He was greeted by a line of soldiers at attention, journalists pressing against ropes, and ministers bowing in respect. Flashbulbs lit up the tarmac. Cameramen captured his every step. But Ibrahim didn't walk with the air of a man proving a point. He walked like a man with a mission. As he passed the cameras, one reporter asked, "Your Excellency, we heard there was an incident on board." He raised a hand gently. "We'll talk later. Right now, I have work to do." He wasn't angry. He was focused. By the next morning, the story had gone global. President of Burkina Faso mistaken for economy passenger. They judged him by his clothes. They had no idea who he was. Ibrahim Traoré teaches the world a lesson in respect. Clips from the plane, leaked by passengers, circulated rapidly. Some viewers were shocked. Others were ashamed. But many were inspired. People across the world began sharing stories of their own, of being dismissed, overlooked, or underestimated. And Ibrahim? He remained silent. He didn't post a video, didn't tweet a response, because he didn't need to. The world was already listening. Back in Paris, the airline headquarters received a hand-delivered letter. It came from the same crew who had worked the flight. It was addressed directly to the president of Burkina Faso. Dear President Traoré, we want to offer not just our apologies, but our gratitude. You exposed our blind spot, not to humiliate, but to awaken. You showed us that respect should never be reactive. It should be automatic. We are changing how we train and how we see. Thank you for the lesson. With humility, the crew of Flight 728. Ibrahim read the letter. He folded it and placed it in his desk drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. That evening, he sat at a long wooden table at the presidential residence with several youth leaders. The topic wasn't about the incident. It was about representation. How many of you, he asked, have ever been told you don't belong? Every hand went up. Now, how many of you believe they were wrong? Every hand went up again, this time higher. He smiled. Then go show them, not with your mouths, but with your movement. Far from the city, in a dusty village where goats wandered and radios crackled with static, a 10-year-old boy watched a clip of the story on his cousin's phone. His eyes widened. He looks like me, the boy whispered, and they told him he couldn't sit there. He was quiet for a long time, then said, one day I'm going to sit there too. The cousin laughed. In first class? No, the boy said, in his seat. Weeks later, Ibrahim prepared to travel again. Same satchel, same suit. This time, at the airport, the staff bowed. The pilot came to greet him personally. One of the flight attendants was the same woman from that day. She approached carefully, eyes searching his. "I learned a lot, sir," she said. He nodded. Then it was worth it. She handed him his ticket, "Ekae." But this time, nobody questioned it. Not because of the seat, but because the world had changed, just a little. It started with a tweet, then a repost, then thousands of comments. And by midnight, the video of President Ibrahim Traoré being disrespected aboard Flight 728 was trending in 37 countries. They disrespected the president. Seat 1A. Respect is basic. Social media exploded. Instagram Reels, TikTok edits, even stitched commentary from influencers and activists flooded timelines. This is why we say respect shouldn't be earned. It should be automatic. They saw a black man in a plain suit and assumed he was nobody. He carried himself like a king, because real kings don't need crowns. Famous personalities, politicians, even celebrities from other countries commented. The incident had become more than just a moment. It had become a movement. Facing immense pressure, the airline held a press conference. A tall executive stood behind the podium, flanked by lawyers and PR reps. Cameras flashed. Journalists shouted questions. She cleared her throat and began, "We deeply regret the incident that occurred aboard Flight 728, involving His Excellency, President Ibrahim Traoré. This was not just a failure of protocol, it was a failure of perspective. We are launching a full internal review, overhauling our staff training, and implementing a new policy. Every passenger deserves dignity, regardless of appearance, attire, or status." But for many watching online, the words came too late. The public didn't just want apologies. They wanted accountability. And more importantly, change. 1 week later, Ibrahim Traoré finally broke his silence. He sat behind a simple wooden desk, dressed just as he had that day. Brown suit, calm eyes, no flash. Cameras rolled, microphones buzzed, and the room held its breath. He spoke not in anger, but with purpose. What happened to me on that flight was not unique. It has happened to millions of people who don't wear suits, who don't carry titles, who walk quietly through this world and are treated as invisible. But we are not invisible. You don't have to be a president to deserve respect. You just have to be a person. He paused. And if this story makes even one more person look twice, not to judge but to see, then maybe the seat was worth it. Months passed. The world moved on, as it always does. New scandals, new trends, new stories. But something was different. Airlines around the world quietly updated their training policies. Universities used the incident as a case study in ethics and prejudice. And a small plaque was quietly mounted on the inside wall of Flight 728, near seat 1A. It read, "Let no passenger be judged by appearance. Everyone deserves respect. Seat 1A, Ibrahim Traoré, President of Burkina Faso." On his final flight of the year, Ibrahim boarded again. Same gate, same bag, same seat. But this time, the crew greeted him not with fear or embarrassment, but with understanding. He sat down, buckled his seatbelt, looked out the window, and smiled. Because sometimes, the smallest moments start the biggest conversations. And sometimes the quietest man on the plane is the one who changes the world.